Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, depending on where in the world we find you today. Welcome to the fourth in our series of webinars covering the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the packaging and processing industries. My name is Marek Szandrowski and I'm the Brand Director at Informal Markets with responsibility for the ProPack portfolio of processing and packaging trade shows across China, India, Southeast Asia and Egypt. We're very excited to be organising this series of webinars in collaboration with the World Packaging Organisation and supported by the Australian Institute of Packaging. Many thanks to Pierre and Nerida Kelton for their enthusiasm in this project and forming the agenda for the series. Today's topic is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the role that packaging plays in food waste and food insecurity. We know that food waste is bad for the environment and also for the climate, given that currently around 40% of all food produced is wasted at some point in the supply chain from production to consumer. This is a massively pressing issue in terms of food sustainability and feeding the planet for the future. To discuss this topic in many of its aspects, I'm delighted to be able to welcome once again a host of international experts from right across the globe. Today's moderator is, as always, Pierre, WPO President based in Australia. Our distinguished speakers include Dr. Manfred Tacker from the University of Applied Life Sciences in Vienna, Dr. Srini Srinivasan, President of the World Design Organization in California, Nerida Kelton, Executive Director, Australian Institute of Packaging in Brisbane, and Kishan Singh, Global Ambassador, World Packaging Organization based in South Africa. I'd also very much like to welcome the more than 600 participants from all over the world that we have attending here today. We would like very much for this to be as an inclusive and interactive session as possible. So please get involved by using the question and answer tab and submitting your questions online, stating your name and the country from where you are attending. Just before I hand over to Pierre, I just wanted to say a few words about what's happening with the ProPack shows. As you're probably aware, due to the pandemic, we've had to reschedule a number of our events into 2021. And have launched several virtual events and hybrid events online. Details of these can be found on the various ProPack show websites. However, I am very pleased to say that the preparations are going extremely well for our two flagship events, which will still physically be taking place. So ProPack Asia takes place next month in Bangkok and ProPack China in Shanghai in November. So if you're based in Thailand or China, please be sure to come along. Without any further ado, I'd like now to hand over to Pierre, President of the World Packaging Organisation, and our guest panelists.
Thank you, Marek, and it is wonderful to be with all of you again across the world. We are online to over 630 folk, so thank you very much for joining us. Fantastic to have you here, and that includes 52 countries. So it will be a wonderful session. As Marek mentioned, we have a team of 4 experts in their field, and they really are just that. They really are the best of the best in those particular fields, and you get the chance to really try them out and see how well they answer to your opinion on questions that you may put to them. And we encourage you to put questions to them throughout the next hour. So let's get the show on the road, because there are lots that we want to get through. I'm going to start off by a short introduction of each of the speaker, and then they will be given 5 or 6 minutes to give a slight overview, a very brief summary really on the topic that they are covering in there as part of the panel today. And then we'll move on to each of them, and then thereafter the various questions will no doubt start coming through. So our first presenter to this evening is Dr. Manfred Tacker. And as Marek correctly mentioned, Manfred is from the University of Applied Sciences based out in Vienna in Austria. And Vienna is also headquarters for the WPO. So we have a fair amount to do with him and his university. He's the course director of the packaging technology, focusing predominantly on packaging and resource management. He's also co-managing director of circular analytics, where they analyze the recyclability of packaging. So I'm mentioning all this to you so that you are able to ask questions relating to his expertise. Manfred, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Yeah, I would like to start with a short overview on the topics which were raised by COVID-19 on food security and waste. So please take the next slide. David, the next slide, please. Yeah, so what we saw here globally was a shutdown and the closing of borders of a lot of countries in the first half of 2020 and a very severe disruption of global supply chain. And this, of course, affected the food and packaging sector as well. So we saw, for example, that there were not enough agricultural workers in many countries because the borders were closed. A lot of food packaging plants had to be closed, and this led to a severe disruption of the global supply chains. And what we see now on the market is here companies are concentrating to build local production plants and to reduce the complexity of the supply chain. Another topic we met here was that people starting hoarding food. So mainly food with long shelf life. So there was a heavy demand for canned food, dry food, but for convenience food as well. And here we had in a few countries here, especially in Europe, we had the effect that due to the hoarding, we had not enough reusable and returnable packaging on the market, which were returned to the filling plants because people stored, for example, water bottles at home, glass bottles at home, and this led to production problems in plants because there were not enough refillable bottles on the market. So and the result was, as you saw, empty shelves because especially for food with long shelf life, there was not enough on the market. The next slide, please. David, the next slide, please. Thank you. Concerning packaging, there was a refocusing on the packaging functions, on the especially on the hygienic design of packaging, because people feared that they could be infected by the packaging itself or by products which were not pre-packed in the supermarkets. So in the first part of the pandemic, we saw a rise in pre-packaged products on the market, but then this increase slowed down. And we had a concentration for products with longer shelf life, and food protection was now more in focus than before. And the next point was that we saw a shift between different packaging materials and food products. People stayed at home, so they bought convenience foods. We saw a strong increase of this sector on the market. And of course, the products with long shelf life, which can be stored at home, such as canned food and dry food, were in heavy demand. Especially for glass, we had production bottlenecks because here in Europe, because we couldn't get enough packaging on the market. And we had a strong increase in plastic packages as well. The next slide, please. So if you now look for the future, we see that infection rates are going up again, and there is a lot of money flowing into the economy. So there are really thousands of billions of dollars or euros going to restart the economy. And I think by restarting the economy, we should think of increasing food security for future pandemics as well. So that means here looking for strategic food and packaging reserves as well. So packaging industry, I think, was a winner of this crisis, and it was considered as a strategic sector of the industry, which is absolutely necessary for providing food and feeding the world. And there is a strong pressure in reducing the complexity of supply chain and in establishing local production. And in the European Union mainly, but in other parts of the world as well, we have to look at the strong emphasis on green and circular economy as well, because in perhaps 1 year or 2 years, COVID-19 will be past, but climate warming will be our future, and reduction of greenhouse gases here will be in focus in the next, I would say, tens of years. Carbon pricing will coming in many parts of the world. Here in the European Union, we have a discussion about the plastic tax of 800 euros per ton of non-recycled plastic packages. We have these goals of plastic reductions. That means at least 20% in weight reduction of plastic packaging till 2025. And we have a pressure on shelf life of food because many mainly flexible barrier packages are not here recyclable and has to be redesigned. So we have to look in the future to combine these learnings from COVID-19 with the goals for the green and circular economy. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Manfred. Right, our next presenter that I'd like to introduce is Srini Srinivasan, who is a highly accomplished designer. He is based out of Silicon Valley and has an enormous amount of experience in design, over 25 years. He is CEO of his own company, and they have facilities in the USA, India, and Japan. Some of the areas that he has done extensive design work is in the electronics field, in housewares, surveillance, domains, and so on. He also is involved in numerous judging programs across the world. Srini is the president of the World Design Organization, so we're very privileged to have him with us here. And I'm sure that Srini will be asked many questions today on packaging design. So that'll be a new area maybe that he can weigh in on and give us some future aspirations of where we should be designing better. So Srini, without ado, I'd like you to present.
Thank you, Pierre. Hello, everybody. My name is Srini Srinivasan, and I'm currently the president of World Design Organization. It is indeed my pleasure to be here with all of us on this webinar. And I would like to thank Mr. Pierre, Pienaar, the president of World Packaging Organization, for inviting me to this event. I believe the values of WPO and WTO are extremely well aligned, which is why I'm excited that we both have recently signed an MOU to work together and explore how design can go with the packaging organization. For the last 60+ years, World Design Organization has been promoting the profession of industrial design across the globe. Today, we stand as the only global organization that connects education, promotional organizations, professional organizations, corporate, and municipalities to provide a global common international platform where people can share their knowledge on design and what design can do to create a better world. We do this through a very well-crafted programs such as the World Design Capital, World Design Impact Prize, World Design Corporate Circle, Interdesign, and Young Designers Circle, as well as the World Design General Assembly, where we elect our new board of directors. In addition to these programs, we also work with global agencies such as the UN entities, as well as with IBM and, for example, WPO and similar organizations to see how we can collaborate to create a better world. As we all know, packaging is almost $1 trillion industry in the world, and is also used just about anything and everything that we are touching on a daily basis as consumers. Be it your the food product that you buy from the supermarkets, or a household goods like batteries, or heavy industrial goods, all of these come with packaging. In the recent years, we have also seen packaging taking a very, very leading position, especially in the consumer electronics, such as the mobile phones and similar devices, where the attraction is more in the packaging sometimes than in the product itself. And companies are spending a fortune in designing futuristic looking as well as very attractive packaging, and which makes a business case as they produce these designs in such a way that people are able to buy these kind of products. So packaging indeed is very, very relevant in our day-to-day life. But as far as the topic today, where we are looking at how COVID has impacted the packaging industry with respect to both food insecurity as well as how we can cope with the futuristic of packaging. First of all, as Manfred mentioned earlier, there is fear all around us in the global scenario where people believe that packaging could cause COVID. There's of course no evidence proven that packaging causes COVID, but it's a different scenario if people who are already affected, who are working in the stores or they are working in public places where they already have affected, and if they are touching some of the material, there is a fear that the virus could get contacted through interaction with people who are already affected. So this is one fear that is already we have to deal with when we are discussing packaging for the future. One of the major challenges that the food industry is facing today due to COVID is the food system is completely in disarray. In the past, people produce food, you do the harvesting, you do the collection, you do the packaging, and then it's a well-oiled machine to send the supply chain to wherever throughout the globe people were sending products and people were buying to satisfy the ever-increasing demand for food products. But come COVID, with all the problems and all the social distancing challenges that the people are facing with, our movements are restricted, our ability to go out and buy and consume are all becoming very, very challenging. Therefore, the global demand for food especially has plummeted. And food industry is one of those industries. They're always meet the demand right on time. If you go to the local grocery stores, especially when you want to buy some vegetables or any of those perishables, they come on Fridays so that they can capture the market on Saturday and Sunday when people have time to go to the groceries and buy fresh vegetables and take them home for consuming for the following week. So that has taken a huge hit, and farmers forgot to harvest, or they did not know what to do with the harvest. Therefore, there was a glut leading to a waste, where Marek mentioned earlier, there is a 40% waste in the normal scenarios in the food industry, but now that is really even gone much, much higher. So what did the companies do? The companies actually are cutting losses by reducing the production, which in turn results in loss of jobs for people who are depending on their jobs to keep them, and which in turn is actually increasing the food insecurity or people who are going on hunger. So suddenly the engine that was well oiled and running has come to a stop. And then now we need to find different ways. We need to design new systems as to how we can create a better economy for the food industry through packaging. One of the things, if you see, people have taken to some of the new businesses have come in terms of, you know, how to do the delivery of products into people's home, because people are scared to go to the stores and be in contact with the people, even with all the 6 foot or 8 foot distancing. So there are companies like Uber Eats or Instacart in the US. They become suddenly popular in terms of saying they take the risk of getting to the shopping list that you have through apps or through emails or whatever, and then going to the store and buying those commodities and bringing it to you at a reasonable time for a very nominal fee. So this is now becoming a trend generally. So this also will become, in my opinion, a future trend. Even after the pandemic is over, we find the virus and everybody is come back to normal saying, oh, this is just like another flu. We will see things change. And one of them would be the Instacarts of the world will not die. They will find the ways to come back. And therefore, you know, we need to come back with a different solution as to how to meet the demand through new supply chain mechanisms. COVID also has affected the insecure population throughout the globe. We saw in the US alone, people who have normal jobs, they've been laid off. Therefore, they were forced to go and stand in the line for, you know, food and other commodities which are day-to-day essentials. So this is another challenge that we are going to be facing for the next few years until we find a way to get out of that. So that's where I think we need to come back with the new methods of packaging. Sustainability is one of those goals that we were following at the WTO level, where UN SDGs were very strictly followed. But COVID has also given rise to not using sustainable packaging, because now people are scared and they want to go back to single-use usage of plastics and other materials. So this is there's a pro and con because of, you know, the COVID pandemic. So we are trying to find out how we can create better solutions for the food industry to stop the wastage, as well as create more security for the products that we are buying on a day-to-day scenario. So I'm looking forward to having more discussions with the rest of the panelists, and thank you.
Thank you, Srini. Our next panelist, a colleague and friend of mine, Mrs. Nerida Kelton. She's Executive Director of the Australian Institute of Packaging, and she also serves on the board of the WPO. She's been in the industry for 22 years and currently is involved in the Department of Environment and Energy's National Food Waste Strategy Steering Committee, very focused on safe food packaging. She's committed in helping packaging industry understand the role that it plays in minimizing food waste. And like many of us, Nerida is passionate in helping to educate and train packaging professionals in the importance of sustainable and circular packaging design. Nerida.
Thank you, Pierre. Now, can everyone see the slides?
Yeah.
So the first thing is just to give you a little bit of an overview of who the Australian Institute of Packaging are. We've been around for nearly 60 years, and we are the peak professional body for packaging training and education in Australasia. So we cover Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Asia. And we are here in the simplest of terms to help you with all aspects of packaging training and education. As the former speakers have said, there are significant issues with food waste around the world. And when you look at it in terms of tonnage, you're looking at, even just in the production aspect, 500 million tonnes of waste per year. When you look at it from a consumption perspective and the value that's put on the waste, you're looking at approximately a 500 billion a year issue. So looking at this picture, this is how much an Australian person, one person, not a household, one person, actually wastes every single year. And that is 298 kilograms of food every single year we waste. So why is food waste so important? Well, it's societal. You know, we can look at it and we can increase food availability to the most vulnerable, which is really important. We can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, which is significantly important. We can reduce pressures on land and water resources. And we can increase productivity and economic growth. And tackling food waste is essential in increasing efficiencies in the way our food is produced, distributed, and consumed. So COVID has shown us that we have a really fragile food system and it's weak. And we need to re-envisage the food systems and we need to look at design. So during the pandemic, we've noticed that we have significant increases of waste. We have levels of losses in perishable agricultural produce. We have significant restriction of movements that hamper transportation. And unfortunately, and it isn't going to go away, we have surging job losses and increased demand for food banks. So now more than ever, we really need to start communicating the important and significant role that packaging plays in minimising food waste. So the AIP has been working on a set of safe food packaging design guidelines with industry, because we believe that safe food packaging is designed to minimise, prevent food waste from paddock to plate, using innovative and intuitive design features that can contain and protect, preserve, extend shelf life, are easily openable and resealable, provide consumer convenience, which is really important, and portion control. But all the while, we have to find the balance and meet global sustainable packaging targets. So the guidelines, which you all will get a copy of, look like this. And what we're trying to do is create an awareness and an understanding with all packaging designers and technologists around the world to really consider all elements that can potentially minimise and ensure that we're not wasting food at the start of the supply chain. And that can be everything from palletisation, tamper evidence, looking at the nutritional aspects, active and intelligent packaging, which is a really important one to consider, barrier, looking at the concepts of skin packaging, obviously portion control, easy opening, easily resealable, controlled dispensing, and inclusive design. Very important aspect is on-pack communication, understanding the differences between date labelling, best before, use by, and even good after. Considering on-pack communication for preparation and of leftovers and recipes and storage, and then all the way through ensuring that we have circular design, meeting global and local sustainable packaging design standards. So the World Packaging Organization runs the WORLDSTAR Packaging Awards, and they announced in August the winners, the 3 winners, gold, silver and bronze. And I just wanted to put it in perspective to show you what good design for safe food packaging looks like. This is Hazeldine Chickens, which actually is an Australian company. They took out the gold, and this is designed for small portion, which is designed for 2 people. It's easily openable, it has a peelable top film, it's freezer ready, it extends shelf life, and it's protecting and preserving. The second winner was from China, and they came up with a modular and flexible recyclable egg box. And it's a reusable egg box that's also recyclable, and it extends the shelf life by 50%. The bronze winner came out of America, and it was for a home fresh entree, and it is not only recyclable, it's reusable, it's modular, it has leak prevention, it's vented, and then there's also a non-vented option, it's microwavable, and it can be used multiple times. And the last thing that I would like to leave for all of you is to look at the date, the 29th of September. The FAO has launched this as their inaugural date for the International Day of Awareness for Food Loss and Waste. And I would ask you to mark this date into your calendars and think about the things that you can do personally at home with your families and in your businesses to minimise and prevent food waste wherever possible. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nerida. Always good to hear what the latest is happening around the world. The next panelist is Kishan Singh. Kishan Singh is based out of South Africa. He's a friend and a colleague of WPO. He is one of our global ambassadors on the WPO. He has 30 years of experience in consulting, but more particularly in packaging technology, where he spends a lot of time in educating more and more folk across the world. He specializes also in business systems optimization, and certainly is a guru when it comes to ISO and implementation thereof. Kishan.
Thank you, Professor Pierre. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be amongst such esteemed colleagues on this panel. And so this morning, I'm actually wearing a few caps. Firstly, as the Global Ambassador for WPO, my role is really to conduct much of the technical training globally. And then in addition to that, I just need to explain that I am part of the African Packaging Organization. So this morning, I will be able to give you some perspectives of food losses and food protection systems in the African continent, although that's quite a big area and over 1 billion people, but yes, I'll do the best I can. In addition to that, I also represent the Institute of Packaging South Africa, where I cover the national education system. So most of the training programs in South Africa are run through myself. And then lastly, I'm also the CEO of a company called MAIP in South Africa. So MAIP South Africa is really a producer responsibility organization known as a PRO. And its main aim is to ensure circular economies, but specifically in the metal packaging value chain in South Africa. So there's a strong thrust in South Africa now to ensure that as much post-consumer metal packaging is recovered and then reutilized either within the packaging value chain, or metal, given its intrinsic value, is quite easily reutilizable in alternative applications, be it the automotive industry or the building industry, or a lot of the metal is exported to other countries who then use it in various applications. So this morning, my presence here is really to cover these areas. And really, I'm more on the sustainability and circular economy of metal packaging in South Africa. But of course, I can talk about general packaging in South Africa as well. So Pierre, I'll leave it to you. That I think covers my introduction.
Need to come on. Thank you. Thanks, Kishan. Thanks for enlightening us on what's happening in your part of the world, and I'm sure that you'll get a lot of questions pertaining to your continent. So if all the panelists can come onto the screen so we can see all of you, Nerida, Srini, and Manfred. And Manfred, I'd like to start with you. How has COVID-19 impacted food safety?
Yeah. COVID-19 had, especially in the expectation of the consumers, quite an impact on food safety here of packaging, because here people fear that they could get infected by food packaging. So I saw a lot of people disinfecting their packaging both on the markets before putting it in the trunk of their car. So there is a fear of the consumer. And what we know at the moment is actually there is no data around which shows that there could be an infection from the packaging to the consumer. So packaging is safe for the consumer. And I think what we saw on the market then is that there was this increase in pre-packaged fruits and vegetables because people wanted hygienically packaged foods for them. We work on other aspects of food safety. That it means chemical contamination. And I think this is an important topic for the future because there are more and more recyclates, especially plastic recyclates, coming on the market, and they must be safe. And the chemical safety of recyclates is very important, and we develop their methods for measuring the genotoxicity here of food contact migrates. So to make sure that circular economy is possible for plastic packaging and other materials as well.
Thank you. Srini, you know, you are a design specialist, and we've had an increase, phenomenal increase in e-commerce and the packaging required for e-commerce. What should we be doing differently in that space when it comes to design to minimize food waste or food insecurity?
Thank you, Pierre. As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic has changed our habits. We are all habit-forming animals, human beings. So we changed our habits from a traditional visit to the shop. Now we are taking, already you're getting used to the Instacarts of the world. We just give a list and then we get the products to our home. So that has actually necessitated a few things on the design. First of all, as a future of this market is not going away. Since we have formed this new habit, we are going to continue to do that. We have already accepted that the cost of the food material that we're going to buy through these channels are going to be slightly higher, either for service industry or even for special packaging. So therefore, see, for example, you know, if somebody is going to bring some of the perishable goods or even some of the frozen items, so when you are not at home, we tell them to leave it on the outside. So therefore, if the e-commerce has to flourish, we need, what do you do normally? We just take those frozen items, you know, whether it's a meat product or a vegetable, like a coconut shredded, which is on frozen. I do that last thing, you know, to take the frozen items. As soon as I come home, put them into the fridge. But now we are not going to the stores. So therefore, the packaging has to support in terms of, you know, maybe there'll be more room for, you know, dry ice kind of scenario or flexi packaging, where there will be additional design elements which will preserve the food that needs to be preserved under certain circumstances. That's number one. Secondly, we're also going to look at hygiene factor, as Manfred said. People are not going to, when we go to the store, we always pick, you know, I know as an Indian born, we don't buy the okra or the lady's finger. I will never go to the shop and order this through the shop online, because I want to check if the bindi or the okra is tender. So we just do a little, you know, breaking of the tip and then we take it, right? So that aspect needs to be compromised through a design saying that how do we ensure the tenderness of that vegetable is there when you buy, as if, you know, the experience has to be matched. Then the e-commerce will flourish. So there are many ways for us to do that. In fact, if you look at the cost will become high because we are going to spend more money on design. Hitherto, we were not spending, I mean, how many times we have seen a banana wrapped in a plastic cling wrap? But now we are seeing that because Manfred said people are scared. They want to put the banana into the, you know, your boot of the car, but that needs to be clean. So therefore, even though the peel is removed and you eat the fruit, but you still need to protect them. So the cost element is going to certainly push up, and designers need to be paid so that they come back, you know, with a very good design. So I believe the e-commerce is here to stay, and we are all going to pay marginally more money, and which will be compensated in saving of your gas for going to the stores and then having some free time for you.
Thank you. Nerida, I'm going to move to you now, but before I ask you a question, I want to leave something for Manfred to think about. We've had a question in from Renata. if you can think about it, don't answer us yet, Manfred. She's saying, is there any proven case of COVID contamination through packaging? So I'll leave that one with you and we'll come back to you. Nerida, what has been some of the food waste ramifications in Australia and New Zealand since COVID-19 has hit us so hard?
I think one of the main ones is the fact that we were all in lockdown, and for those who aren't aware around the world, we have a state that's still in lockdown. They've been in lockdown again for the second time. So every time we go back into lockdown or we have restrictions, then as Srini said, our buying behaviour changes. So what that means is I myself used to buy fresh, used to buy only what I needed. I followed the model of what I tell everybody here, and I can't do that now. So I'm buying more canned food and more food that's non-perishable, and I'm worried that I'm going to be a hypocrite and I'm going to start wasting the food that I'm buying because I don't want to go out as often, and I'm doing more deliveries. And I think that that is a concern for food waste, and I would encourage everybody, if you're overbuying at the moment, please share it with your families, please share it with your communities. Don't waste it, don't throw it in the bin, because there are people who need it. The other thing that concerns me is the loss of donations. We've had a massive 40% drop in donations to food banks and collection services here, which is really, really sad, because they don't have enough food now to look after all of the people that need it. With a 40% drop and a 50% increase in requirements and requests for it, we're in trouble. So we have people that have no jobs that need food, and we don't have enough at the moment. And again, I would go back to, please donate food, please consider donating food, because there are so many people that need it all the way around the world at the moment that don't have jobs anymore.
Thank you. Okay, Kishan, if you can just hold a minute while Manfred answers that question for Renata.
Yeah, I know no proven case of an infection, of a COVID-19 infection via packages. And as far as the experts tells us, the smear infections of COVID-19 is not the problem. The problem is the infection via aerosols and so on, via the air. Okay.
Thanks very much. Kishan, I know there have been some countries that have banned alcohol and the sale of alcohol during shutdown periods. And I know that in Africa, and particularly in South Africa, that happened as well. And as we know, in the alcohol industry, it's glass, it's paperboard, it's metal packaging. What has been the impact on this to the industry?
Okay, thanks, Pierre. Yes, you're quite right. So given the impact of COVID-19 and the moment South Africa hit the lockdown, which was around the 27th of March, the strict rule in the country was that there's a complete ban on alcohol, and not only alcohol, also cigarettes. So the impact of this was that whilst metal packaging plants continued to run food packaging, all of the alcohol beverage canned demand dropped to literally zero within the week. And this went on for about 4 months. The result of this was an excessive supply of aluminium in the country. And also, given the fact that there was restricted movement in South Africa, and I would imagine this would be right across the entire continent where there would be a restriction of movement. The impact of this was that the waste pickers that typically would pick up post-consumer packaging for the purposes of collection and recycling and recovery, that process actually came to a standstill, which resulted in a surplus of post-consumer metal packaging now left in the field. So now that we are normalizing or coming back to the new normal in South Africa, we are seeing a slight imbalance in the system. And I think it will take us another couple of months, probably 6 to 8 months before this imbalance is restored.
Thank you. Manfred, you are representing Europe. You might not know that, but you're the only European on this panel. So speaking on behalf of Europe, the coronavirus pandemic has reshaped industry, and I'm sure it's reshaped industry in Europe. certainly in the short and the long-term implications affecting packaging. What is your comment on this?
Yeah, I think COVID has a very high impact on the European food and packaging industry. We see that we have here a shifting of different packaging materials. So in metal packaging, for example, or in packaging for which prolongs food shelf life, that's the one hand. And the second is here we see a tendency to local production here and to reduce the complexity of the global supply chains. So that means that there will be smaller production plants here and more local production plants, and perhaps a reduction of imports and exports of packaging materials here in this case. So, and the next thing is that industry has to tackle at the same time with global warming and the environmental effects of packaging and food, and with the COVID-19 as well. And so companies have to find the optimal solutions for them. And as we see on the market, many companies don't know what are the packaging designs and the packaging materials for the future. So we will see a lot of change in the next 5 years.
Thank you. Srini, if I understood you earlier on, you alluded to the fact that we need to see some changes. And when we move to the next normal, we don't know what the next normal is, but when we move to it, packaging companies will need to rethink beyond the things like reasonable costs or convenience or performance. What's your comment?
Yeah, certainly there will be a paradigm shift in the way in which we do the packaging. First of all, I think it will the need of the hour is to go ready to market kind of packaging. So there will be lesser store and forward kind of scenario would be there. So people need to do different packaging. While we do that, we are also seeing several companies, especially in Europe, in Sweden, also a couple of companies in the US and Mexico. So they are doing biodegradable material. There is a new development of material that is being currently put into research and also prototyping. So these are, especially very good for food packaging. As an example, they are using the sugarcane waste. Also, they are using agar-agar as a material, and then bee wax. All these are used simply to create safe packaging for food industry. And in the US, this is not for the food industry, but it's an interesting aspect. They are using the pineapple skin that is usually thrown. So there's a company called Pienaar, and the Pienaar is actually producing absolutely leather-like material that can be biodegradable, and that's being used in fashion goods and also in some specific food or other material packaging is being done. So the design has a bigger role to play as we move forward to the new normal. And I believe sustainability will come back because people have started, stopping that because of the COVID fears. But I think that will come back to us to create better solutions where design will have a much more impactful role.
Thank you. There is the impact on home deliveries, and I'm sure that during this COVID-19 period, you had some home deliveries. You laugh, clearly you have. So how has this impacted on food integrity? And if it has, how has it? And if it will, how will it?
Sorry, so your question is, how has the design of the delivery packaging?
I'm looking more at we've got so many things happening on home deliveries right across the spectrum of all packaging. But in terms of food integrity, how has this affected that particular aspect? these home deliveries as opposed to buying it in the shops?
Yeah, I actually think it has, because we buy our produce locally. We literally walk off to the supermarket, we used to before COVID, on a daily basis and purchase it as and when needed. I'm finding with the delivery systems that the produce is not so perfect. And I think Srini was saying it before, it is about that perfection that we need. Certainly tomatoes are one that I'm noticing at the moment, and a couple of other produce items. In terms of non-perishable, no, I don't see anything different at all. But in terms of produce, absolutely. The other thing is if you're looking at delivery systems, you need to look at the temperature of the climate that you're delivering to. And obviously, if we're in a very humid country, particularly up here in Queensland, and you do have to look at making sure that you're at home and that you can actually get it in really quickly, particularly the refrigerated goods. So I think there are some concerns on that.
Thank you. It looks like Srini would like to give an opinion as well, and then followed by Kishan.
Thank you, Pierre. So I think one of the aspects of home delivery that is happening currently, because of lower supply of goods, there is a tendency for us to say it's okay for us to get a substitute. If you wanted a particular type of potatoes in this example, maybe it doesn't have it. So they just choose, and then you have no reason to return it. You just take it. You're grateful in many ways, saying, but you're paying for it. You're paying a premium, but the sense of, satisfaction, oh my God, thank you, you brought this potatoes because I needed it for tomorrow's, lunch or whatever, right? I think this sense of acceptability, especially in the US, when people used to go and return just a half a pound of potato because they were not good. They took one and they saw it was not good. This change has come when people are forced to take what is available, which is bad in many ways because, the bad quality in terms of the security or the integrity of the product. So that's not what you are able to, the quality inspection that we do visually or otherwise is not possible in the current scenario of home delivery. And I think it's a two ways, right? The merchants are also taking some advantage. They just, push off the things which normally they would have had to dump it because nobody will buy. But here, there is a market for those things.
Thank you. Kishan.
Thanks, Pierre. Now, mine's a bit of a lighthearted one. I just would like to remind Nerida that she received a batch of fritters from South Africa recently to her door, and I hope she hasn't wasted any of that food.
I certainly don't waste food, and I ate all of them, as Pierre can attest to it. And I made sure that they were not wasted, and happy for another delivery, and it was exceptional service right to the door. So wonderful service all the way from South Africa. And Pierre, I just want to add something. When you said about the delivery process, that I laughed about what I've been receiving at home. I've been receiving alcohol. So I've taken what isn't going to be needed in South Africa and made sure that it had a good home over here.
Thank you. Thank you. Kishan, consumers are staying at home more now than ever before, and indoors in some countries, and I'm sure across Africa as well. And they require products to keep themselves environmentally clean or keep the environment clean, keep themselves clean and hygienic. What impact has this had on packaging across Africa?
Thank you, Pierre. Very interesting question. So yes, of course. So because of the shopping restrictions and mobility restrictions, people have opted to buy goods and food that can last longer. So what's the solution? Most of this is actually well solved by metal packaging. So you find lots of canned products have been sold, and therefore the demand on metal generally has seen an increase. Personally, I mean, if I had to project over the next 5 to 10 years, I would see metal packaging taking a definite incline in terms of, or taking more of the packaging pie globally. because of its intrinsic value and it is great ability to be recycled and recovered in the value stream. So so certainly because of consumers being restricted, I'm seeing a lot of metal packaging utility. Also glass, there's a lot of emphasis on glass packaging as well. So, you know, Pierre, from Medpac's point of view, at the moment in South Africa, we are recovering, and I'm giving you 2018 stats, around about 78% of the metal packaging post-consumer is actually recovered and reutilized, which is a pretty good number and very well comparable with European benchmarks. So because of that, I see metal packaging becoming more of the preferred choice. So yeah, I see a very positive growth pattern with metal and with glass. Yeah.
Thank you. Manfred, there's been another question which I'm going to rephrase slightly to make it more, relates more to COVID-19 from FAIP. And he wants you to comment on the need of compostable packaging materials for food packaging in COVID-19.
Yeah. We see a lot of demand at the moment for compostable packaging on the market, which is not related to COVID-19. And we don't think that there is a hygienic problem with compostable packaging. So they are perfectly fit for packaging at the moment. The problem I see for most countries, especially in Europe now, there is no material stream for the collection of compostable packaging at the moment. So usually they are thrown away with the plastic packaging, and they are just being burned. So I think that's one of the problems we have to solve in the next future, because otherwise this will be a very big obstacle to compostable packaging.
Thank you. Nerida, comment on that?
Absolutely. I think, you know, from an Australian New Zealand perspective, we have a lot of challenges with compostable and biodegradable packaging. The reality is we have very limited capabilities and collection programs here that can do it. And unfortunately, consumers have a misconception of what it actually can do, and they contaminate the current recycling streams in this country. Food service and hospitality is absolutely perfect for it. We have incredible closed loop programs here for that. But I would challenge people to really look at that and look at the actual true recyclability of the packaging in the country that you sell the product in before you make the decision on moving to compostable and biodegradable, because otherwise you're going to contaminate the streams that we have and are already challenged with around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Srini, I think the consumer's need for convenience has changed during COVID-19. Do you think so?
Absolutely. Because previously we were, like I said, you know, we were looking for that particular product or a service, but now we are already compromised because you cannot get that service. Earlier, Kishan was saying there was no alcohol, but then you need to go to Queensland to get alcohol. It's not going to happen. That's very expensive. So therefore, the convenience factor is certainly changed to a majority of people for a majority of reasons. Even economically, people are conserving cash now because they don't know what's going to happen, because some of them were furloughed and laid off, so they cannot, their average monthly spend has reduced quite a bit. So therefore, your convenience aspect also changed. They look for cheaper products, so they can keep the cash stretched longer. So this is one of the trends that are happening both in the developed as well as developing economies.
Nerida, has COVID-19 had a direct impact on increased food preservation, extending the shelf life, and minimizing food waste? Has it? Your comment.
I think that COVID has shown a lot of consumers what the real true role of packaging is, which is to protect and preserve and contain and transport. So I think from that perspective, it has put the industry in a more positive light. And I think that consumers have slightly changed or modified their views and understanding of packaging. I think that we have a big way to go on the plastic challenge. But I do truly believe that a lot of people now understand why we wrap a cucumber, why we need to extend shelf life. Even more importantly now, if we're having blockages in our domestic and global supply chains, particularly in deliveries. Deliveries coming to Australia and New Zealand are challenged at the moment, and we have limited amount of planes and limited amount of freight coming over. So I think that we need to do more as an industry, but we do need to communicate the true role of packaging.
Kishan, in South Africa, are you finding that you guys are turning back to local? In other words, getting what you were importing in terms of packaging materials, are you starting to remake those items now locally?
Are you referring to raw materials or?
Yeah, or finished goods. But in other words, roll stock, importing glass products already, formed. Same in the plastics industry. Is that happening in South Africa or across Africa?
Well, the thing is, South Africa, to a very large extent, is very self-sufficient in terms of its, both in terms of its packaging and then a product. It's self-sufficient. And during the actual lockdown, the main part of the lockdown, which would have been from March to about June, imports as well was frozen. So yes, we had to look to ourselves internally to satisfy all of the markets. But as I said, we have adequate capacity to be able to do that. So yeah, definitely internally and with less focus on imports. Even our exports have been stopped. So you would see that as the movement into and out of the country has been very, very minimal.
I'm going to ask two more questions. I need a 30-second answer. I'm going to direct them at Nerida and Srini. This year will be a year to remember. Nerida.
Absolutely, good and bad. For the packaging industry, I think it's been good in a lot of areas. For the fact of COVID, no, bad.
Srini.
My wife is very happy because I was never at home for more than 1 week, but I'm stuck at home for 6 months.
Kishan, 15 seconds.
Yeah, listen, COVID has, every cloud has a silver lining. The fact that we are doing this webinar online now is a result of COVID. I mean, all of us, I traveled all over the world, and all of a sudden now I'm doing so much from sitting at home. So my answer is, yes, it's been a stumbling block to the economy, but definitely an opportunity for doing things differently.
And Manfred, 10-second answer.
Yeah, I think it poses a lot of challenges for the packaging industry and for us. And I hope that we will solve the environmental and global warming problems together with COVID.
Well, thank you, all of you. It's been wonderful putting questions to you. And this is the nice part about it. I put the questions and wait for the answers. And you, all four of you have done so well. It's been fascinating. It's been intriguing. It's been really fulfilling in many aspects. I thank you all so much. From Manfred in Vienna, Austria, in Kishan, Durban, South Africa, in San Jose, in California, USA, and in sunny Queensland, Brisbane. Thank you, Nerida.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
I'd just like to say thank you very much, Pierre, for moderating the session with great aplomb as usual, and thank you very much to all the panelists and the contributors. I just wanted to point out that we haven't quite yet Brexited, so we are technically still European here in the UK. Just to reference Manfred was referenced as the only European, but here as well, just for a couple of more months anyway. If insightful contributions from the panel, and I think it's been a very enlightening debate. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that yes, 2020 is a year certainly to remember, or possibly one to forget, depending on your outlook, but it presents lots of challenges and indeed lots of opportunities. And the biggest takeaway is that the role of packaging is, as Nerida quite eloquently pointed out, its primary function is to preserve and food and products. And so so very much definitely packaging is part of the solution and not the problem, as often portrayed. If anyone should like to receive copies of the presentations that were made, please drop us a line at propack@informa.com and we'd gladly share those with you. Any questions that were asked and haven't been answered as yet will be circulated to the panel and we will get back to you. If anyone would like to see this webinar again, it will be very shortly hosted on our YouTube channel, so you can get your colleagues and friends to look at it, or if you've missed any of the previous 3 sessions, then you can check those out as well. So all that remains for me is to let you know that the next webinar and the final webinar in the series which will look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the effect it's had on the global supply chains, and that takes place on the 21st of October and features another international panel of contributors. So please tune in for that, and we look forward to your attendance there. So up until that point, thank you very much, and in the meantime, please stay safe and goodbye.